Greetings and welcome to the last unit of this module 1 of TALG, and this unit is 19th unit. It is related to the attainment of program outcomes and program specific outcomes. In the earlier unit we understood how to compute the attainment of course outcomes and close the quality loop around COs. Once again we should remind there is no the way of computing attainment of COs. Some reasonable method can be chosen and stay with that method consistently. And the purpose of doing this to somehow to prove to ourselves and to all the stakeholders that we are continuously improving. That is the main purpose of closing the loop, quality loop. And in this unit we look at the computing of attainment of POs and PSOs and close the quality loop around POs and PSOs. That is the main purpose of this unit. Now let us look at the accreditation requires that the institution to demonstrate the level of attainment of POs and PSOs and their continuous improvement. That means you take one batch of students, generally in general programs you have undergraduate level you have a 3-year program. From one batch to the other you are improving the performance of the students. That means you are putting efforts to improve the performance of the student. So what happens as POs and PSOs only we can look at after a batch of students complete their 3-year program. So you have to compute the POs and PSOs over a period of 3 years, in the sense 3-year program, and the students' performance in all courses and activities should be integrated together to find out to what extent the POs and PSOs are addressed and attained. So you must have, to show improvement, you must have data over 4 years, or that is 2 batches have actually graduated, and this is the requirement. You cannot just compute for one course and say immediately talk about the PO PSO attainment. And to that extent, as it is over a batch of students, the responsibility of the entire department comes in when you are talking about attainment of POs and PSOs. Through one course you cannot just attain all the POs and PSOs. And another issue is POs and PSOs can be addressed and attained through core courses. Core courses means they are all compulsory courses. All students of the batch will have to take the core courses, and as per the current UGC norm, 72 credits in a 120 credit program constitute the core courses. A university may slightly deviate from that, but cannot deviate significantly from this. And projects may or may not be compulsory for all students, but we have to take only the activities that are done by all the students. You cannot say only some students do the projects, some do not. In such case it does not qualify to be used to compute attainment of POs and PSOs. Other activities could be presentations, internship, co-curricular and extracurricular activities. One cardinal rule is whatever that you take as an activity to attain a PO or PSO, it should be done by all the students, and all this like presentations, internship, co-curricular, extracurricular activities, you must have a method of measuring the performance of the students in those activities. You cannot say he has done internship and just write one sentence, that will not do. You have to have some kind of measurement of the performance of the student in the internship. Now what about electives? Electives are also, they constitute an important part, and they do play an important role, but what happens is they are not included in computing the POs and PSOs. Many times we find the departments or faculty feel very unhappy that they are not included. Okay. So, if they are not included in computing the PO PSO attainment, it does not mean they are not important. They serve their purpose, but as far as attainment computation is concerned, we do not take those courses into consideration. That is what we mean by what do you call, one need not feel very bad that it is not included in the computing the attainment. Now, here also the quality loop, we draw it slightly differently. So, PO PSO attainment for the program through core courses, projects, presentations, co-curricular activities and extracurricular activities, that is compared with PO PSO targets, and then you compute the PO PSO attainment gap, and that should lead to plan for closing the PO PSO gap or for enhancement of the PO PSO targets. That is the same method that we followed for COs. Let us say we tagged each course outcome with POs and PSOs, and we also said a CO can only address a subset of POs and PSOs. Now, just because one CO briefly, which takes only 2 classroom sessions, is addressing some PO5, obviously it is not the same thing as all COs addressing a particular PO. Okay. So, what happens, we introduce the another word called strength. To what extent, to what strength am I addressing a particular PO or PSO? It may be important, but still to what strength do I address this? This is one part which is, again, it is a little subjective decision, but the decision should be taken at the institute level rather than, or not in fact even at department level, it should be taken at the institution level. And occasionally we may, that is we write COs and then determine what POs it addresses. Occasionally we may want a particular CO to address a pre-specified PO or PSO. That also can happen. The reason for that we will explain a little later when we prepare the final table. Now, attainment of PO PSO depends both on the attainment levels of associated COs and the strengths to which it is mapped. Okay, there are two parameters. One is whether a PO is associated with the CO or not, and the strength to which it is mapped. So, we have to find a method of determining the strength. The strength is again is only what do you call, it is not a too fine a mechanism, it is fairly gross. We only identify 3 levels: low, medium and strong. Instead of or you can use the word 1, 2, 3. Okay. As we are computing all the time, we will use the numbers 1, 2, 3 rather than low, medium and strong. And as we said, again, how do we, because it is a qualitative approach, how do we measure the strength to which it is addressed? And here again you have to be careful. You should not make it too trivial, not too elaborate, but some kind of a justifiable to outside world. You have to choose a mechanism of that type, and it should be the same across all programs and across all years of your for example computation. As we said, to demonstrate that you are continuously improving, you have to have at least 4 years of data. Now we propose a simple method to relate the level of PO with the number of hours devoted to the CO which addresses the given PO. The logic is this: if let us say one CO is addressing PO1, but that CO I only take 2 hours. So obviously even though I am addressing this PO, I am only dealing with the scope of that address is limited to 2 hours. But in another case, I have a CO which addresses some PO2, but the number of classroom hours associated with is 7. That means I am spending more time through CO in addressing that particular PO. So this is what the basic logic is. If we propose, if greater than or equal to 40% of the classroom sessions, tutorials, lab hours addressing a particular PO, it is considered that PO is addressed at the level of 3. If you do not like 40%, you can make it 50%, you can make it 60% as you wish. If 25 to 40% of the classroom sessions, tutorials, lab hours addressing a particular PO, it is considered that PO is addressed at level 2. If 5 to 25% of classroom sessions, tutorials or lab hours addressing a particular PO, it is considered that PO is addressed to level 1, and anything less than 5% of the class sessions, it is nominally mentioned, but we are only spending less than 5%, then we consider that PO is not addressed at all. So this is, as I said, is a subjective proposal. This proposal can be considered by the institute or the university and suitably modified to reflect your thinking of the strength of addressing a given PO. Now once again, the developmental biology, same course we are taking, we are now putting all the numbers here and the course description is given here. And now if you count with respect to the number of hours associated with PO where PO1 appears, like 28 out of the 45 sessions, total are 45. If I count all the sessions where PO1 is mentioned, it will add up to 28 out of the 45 sessions, and that is 62%, and so it is more than 40%. So it is mapping strength is 3. Now as far as PO3 is concerned, 31 out of 45, which still makes it 69%, which is mapping strength 3. In that sense, even PO5 and PSO3 are all addressed to mapping strength 3, which is a specific instance here, but it need not be so, that all the POs will not get addressed to the strength of 3. Now what happens? We prepare a kind of a table. We mentioned already, we are tentatively taking in this example 6 POs, but if it is 7 POs you add one more column, that is all, and then there are maximum possible 4 PSOs, and this is how we prepare the table where PO2, PO4, PO6, PSO1, PSO2 and PSO4 are not addressed at all. So that strength will be 0. So it is 3 0 3 like that. You prepare a kind of you can call it course PO PSO mapping, is a matrix of that type. Now what happens? CO1 is addressing PO1 and PSO3. That CO attainment is 62.63, that we have already calculated in the previous unit. The attainment is 62.63, and the associated POs and PSOs are indicated in this table. So now you can see I can somehow associate the CO attainment to corresponding POs and PSOs. How do I do that? We need to define something like PO or PSO attainment to some norm. I can call it 100% or I can just merely say 1. It does not matter to what is the norm that you would take, the maximum that you would take. Now how do you define, if I consider attainment, maximum attainment of a particular PO is 1, under what conditions do I consider that? If a PO is to be addressed at the level 3 and the attainments are, that is class average marks of CO associated with that PO, of all COs associated with that PO is 100%. That means class average marks are 100%, then the attainment of that PO is 1, which is not likely to happen ever. Obviously class average marks will never be 100%. And also performance in any co-curricular and extracurricular activities which are evaluated as per declared rubrics can also be treated as a course. And another thing that we would like to point out, when we calculate finally the PO PSO attainment, we are not going to differentiate between a 4 credit course, 3 credit course, 2 credit course and so on. We do not have to again weigh, add that extra weightage to that. We will just say all courses are similar and we just compute an average, divide the total attainment by the number of courses that we actually have, or number of not only courses, number of activities like project, presentation, co-curricular, extracurricular. Each activity I will treat it as if it is a course and then divide the total PO attainment by that number. That is the way we will work it out. As I said, it is very gross, but what is of importance is that according to that criterion that we are improving continuously. Now how do I compute? The attainment is computed. Let us assume there are 5 COs that are addressing PO1, or here there are 5 COs that are addressing the PO1. So the CO attainments numbers are given there. I take an average of that, average of 0.626 plus 0.632 and so on. I compute that average and multiply by the strength, because the maximum strength is 3, the actual strength is 3. So I multiplied by 3 by 3 and that is the number that I get. So attainment of PO1 according to this is 0.608. Whereas attainment of PO5, there are only 3 COs that are dealing with which are addressing PO5, but the strength is still 3. So what do I have? 3 by 3 into average of those 3 numbers, I get 0.611. Whereas PSO3 all of them are addressing. So I have again 3 by 3 into average of all of that and I get 0.610. See, what you require to be is consistent with one process and you get some numbers. You do not have to, as I said, keep on going for higher decimal places. Approximate numbers are okay and this is what you get of PO and PSO attainment. Now if you with respect to this course, which tentatively we label it as C302, the strength to which each PO is addressed is given there and the actual attainment is computed in the bottom row. That is what you have. For what, this is for one course. Now you have to collect this information for all the courses and all the activities of the program. So you have to repeat this for all the courses. These computations can be done automatically at the end of each semester after the exams are over, collect all the marks, and it is easier to kind of integrate it together like this. Okay. So, these are the for example, we combine together and put all the courses into this together. For example, you will have something like about 20-25 courses in a 3-year program, and for each course you have one row like this of attainment. And as I said, the project, internship, all of them are added to this list. And then what do? You take the average with respect to each column and divide by the number of activities and courses that you have, and the bottom row represents the average attainment of all the POs and PSOs. And here there is something that you need to, this is also the direct attainment of the POs and PSOs. Sometimes what happens is, the way our program is addressed, we may or may not address certain PO that very dominantly. It may be done very lightly. While that is the input to the curriculum designers to address that particular issue, but one need not feel bad if the numbers, let us for example PO6, the average is 0.3. It is okay, it does not matter as long as you can show you are improving from year to year. Okay. So, finally, the PO and PSO attainments are computed in this form, and by looking at this overall matrix, that you can see it's a kind of a picture of how your program has been designed and conducted with respect to the POs and PSOs. And if certain columns are either have too many zeros or very small value, it is a kind of feedback to the entire department that some attention needs to be paid to those issues. That is what it means. Now, we also we determine the indirect attainment based on all the relevant surveys. Surveys could be graduate exit survey, that means when the students are just leaving the program, you conduct a survey, alumni survey, employer survey. These forms can be designed and actually get the information from that. And this indirect attainment should be combined with direct attainment. Typically you take 80% weightage to the direct attainment and about 20% weightage to this, and combined together you produce the final picture of the PO PSO attainment. Until we streamline the processes, it looks very laborious and difficult and complicated, but once you streamline the process, including the alumni survey, employer survey, these days one can set up websites and keep constant touch with alumni and employers, and of course employer and alumni, they will not, everyone will not answer, even 10% of them will answer those questionnaires. That is quite adequate. Okay. Now, let us take an example PO3. It is some PO3 because PO3 will be has to be addressed by quite a few courses. Direct attainment on all relevant academic activities, it is 65.5%. Indirect attainment based on all relevant surveys is 85.5%. I combine the two, 0.8 into 65.5 plus 0.2 into 85.5, I get 69.5. Now, you have to repeat this for all POs and PSOs. And once again you set the target. This target now, as we said, a maximum number is 1. I can set my target as, for a particular PO, as 0.7, 0.6 or sometimes even 0.2 also. does not matter. One, you set your target for that, and if attainment is less than the target, then plan improvement actions. Attainment is greater than or equal to target, then revise the target. The same process that we followed for computing or for closing the loop around COs. Now here, instead of tabular form, we are giving on specific thing. PO2 combined attainment is 69.5, target is 75%, we call it 0.75, then attainment gap is 5.5%, and improvement action plan. Here you should remember PO2 is going to be addressed by a number of courses. So all the improvement actions do not take place through one course. It happens through several courses. So here just we give a list, add an extra communications lab in the 3rd semester as value added core course, introduce a seminar starting from 3rd semester, add in the 4th semester a 5-day workshop on communication skills, because here PO2 is related to communication. So this is how we use we compute PO attainment and plan for improvement of that attainment. We are repeatedly using this, making this statement. The attainment computation is at best an approximation. Whatever process you people will choose in your institute, whatever we presented is at best an approximation. Even if more precise computation is possible, the effort involved may not be worth it. It is not going to throw any extra light on anything. What is important is to follow one method across an institute and strive for continuous improvement in attainment. That is what is the most important part. Now as an exercise, some set realistic PO attainment targets, compute PO attainment using hypothetical numbers, and plan for improvement of learning for the program for which you are working. Use if you have actual numbers from the department, you can use, or hypothetical numbers you can use to understand the mechanisms involved in that. And thank you for listening.